The second you can afford it, it's the best hire you can make is going and hiring a because scaling anything, it's all about just getting your time back so you can do higher leverage activities.
You had a business that had some early wins and all of a sudden you just exploded. So talk to me, like, what was the state of the business like just on the cusp of that scaling up?
If you have a working funnel that's bringing in over $100,000 a month, don't turn it off. That's one of the dumbest things. I've probably got a long list of dumbest things I've done, but that certainly deserves its place near the top.
When is the moment when you sit back and you're like, okay, it's time to double down and scale up? And what does that look like?
So I think it's actually easier to identify when you're not ready to scale up, because I've got the experience as a media buyer where I've spent millions of dollars on just Facebook ads alone. I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Could I go pump $1 million of ads behind that? Yes. Would it work? No, it wouldn't.
There was one of these things that you would tell a new founder, just go focus on this one thing for now, just to get started. What would you tell them to focus on?
It's a great funnel. It's probably the easiest funnel to go make your first $10, $20, even $50,000 a month. But that funnel does not scale well beyond maybe $100,000 a month.
Okay. I have usually the person in the boardroom who says the irreverent or funny thing in the moment. So funny story actually about that. When COVID was happening and we were in incident command, I'm in it's our incident commander, our hospital president, our chief nursing officer, our chief medical officer, a bunch of our nursing directors, and we're all planning like the response. What do we need to do for the day for COVID? We had a call earlier where we were talking with the doctors from Italy because they had experienced COVID, a couple weeks in advance of what we did, and we were learning from their experiences. And so we're all going through it, and everybody's like just sheer terror on their face. And I look up and I just look around the boardroom and this is fun. This is a great bonding moment. I'm so glad to be here with you. Like, anybody want to get drinks after? And they all just looked at me like I was the worst, like most irreverent person. They're like, what the hell? I'm like, I'm serious. I'm so glad to be bonding with you guys in this moment. Wouldn't choose this crisis, but we're here. Let's smile. And they all started laughing, but they thought I was like just the most irreverent person ever.
I remember you and I connecting around that period, and we had entirely different experiences professionally through COVID, because on my end, that was the second company I had started, second healthcare company I had started, where we had just started to really figure some things out. And for us, COVID was like lighter fluid on a very small fire that made it explode in the best way possible. Because we already had infrastructure set up for it, right? We were already a fully remote company, both in our team, but also in our service that we were providing. But then on top of that, COVID really brought health to the front of everybody's mind on a global front. And people were immediately looking for places to get healthier. And we were so well set up for that.
You had to be ready to scale in that, though.
Exactly. Yeah. And the beauty for us is we had been just starting to do that maybe 6 months before then. So I genuinely think if we had not laid that infrastructure before COVID started, I don't know if it would have gone the same way. We would have scaled at some point. I mean, it's a skill set. And it took me probably 6 months to really acquire that skill set. But because we were ready when that happened, it was like a force multiplier for us, where instead of maybe going from a 1x multiple to a 2x multiple, we legitimately in a 12-month period were 10, 15xing the business. I mean, we were doubling like month over month, a few months consecutively. It was exhilarating, but we learned a lot.
This is interesting though, because I've worked in small organizations that have grown not by 10x, but have grown, and then now I'm obviously in a massive organization, but I haven't experienced that scaling. So, you had a business that had some early wins, and then all of a sudden you just exploded. So talk to me, like, what was the state of the business like just on the cusp of that scaling up?
So when I say scaling up, right, I'm talking about a company that's at least $500,000 a year, and they're ready to make that jump to 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, maybe even all the way up to 10 million.
Okay, so they've had some early wins.
Definitely.
Okay.
So for a company like this, they have a validated offer. And what a validated offer means is not only are they able to sell it at least a 20 or 30% clip on a phone funnel, or say maybe a 1 to 5% on an online funnel, or even if they're a brick and mortar, they're having no issue selling it. Like the feedback is not, no, I don't want this. They also have consistent lead flow. Now, whether or not they are nurturing that lead flow properly, whether or not those leads are perfectly aligned, at $500,000 a year, neither of those things are usually happening. But there's people that want their product, and there's definitely product market fit. The people are buying it, and then the people that actually buy it are utilizing it and want it, and are even potentially rebuying it, depending on what the offer is. Now, at this point, usually we're talking about a solopreneur, maybe a solopreneur with a VA, maybe a small sales team like a junior sales rep or one closer, something along those lines. But we're talking about a small team.
What's a VA?
A VA is a virtual assistant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody who's working remotely but helping you with some basic tasks.
Yes. And if you are I personally believe anybody that has any net operating income in their life, whether you are working at a 9 to 5, or you are a solopreneur, or you're a CEO of freaking Coca-Cola, I think the second you can afford it, it's the best hire you can make is going and hiring a VA. Because scaling anything, whether it's in a business or if you're inside of even just a traditional career path, it's all about just getting your time back so you can do higher leverage activities. And this is no more the case than with solopreneurs, because in the beginning it's you are doing everything. You are emailing clients, you are fulfilling for clients, you're doing the sales, you're doing the marketing, you're doing social posts, you're dancing on TikTok. There's nothing for your business that you're not doing. So the second you can justify it, and if it's not your first rodeo, maybe even a little before you can justify it truthfully, hire somebody to take off all these just mundane, repeated, I'm getting a FaceTime from my mom.
There's a snake in my garage.
Hey, I'm on a podcast right now. Do you want to tell the podcast?
Hi, Mom.
Hi, everybody. There's a snake in my garage.
Okay.
Trevor needs to help me.
Okay, well, I live multiple states away, so I'll call you later, okay?
Okay.
I love you, sweetie. Bye. Anyways, back to scaling companies.
So you said so you've got a validated offer, you've got a virtual assistant, you've got a referral funnel that seems to be working to some degree. So how do you know then, when is the moment when you sit back and you're like, okay, it's time to double down and scale up? And what does that look like?
So I think it's actually easier to identify when you're not ready to scale up, because when you are ready to scale up can be, for lack of a better term, there's probably going to be a moment where the owner or the operator is going to probably have to put their balls on the table. And you're just going to have to make that next step. For most businesses, it's not supremely evident that it's like, cool, yeah, we're just going to go from $500,000 a month or $500,000 a year to $5 million a year. And, let's just check this box and do it. Right? It's not going to be that obvious. You're going to have to take that jump. But there's two very clear signs that you are not ready for that. The first one is you don't have lead flow.
Is that lead flow at all, or you just don't have much?
It's really none, and maybe it's not much, right? You can go out and find some customers, but you don't have any inbound leads. Right? There's no predictable lead flow. And I see this most often with people who are relatively talented at sales, or at least talented in the process of going out and making the effort. Right? But there's no consistent lead flow. So it's just an eat what you kill. And the problem with that is, if you are doing founder level sales, right? If you're the founder and you're doing sales, in the beginning, that's very hard to replicate. That's not generally a very replicable sales process. Does that make sense?
Why? Tell me why.
Yeah. So a lot of times the skill set of a founder doing a sales call and the first sales rep they hire, there's always going to be a gap. The main reason is the founder knows the product or the service infinitely better than somebody new is. Even if this person has all this traditional sales.
Sure. They've got the passion. They've got the vision. This is what they were excited about.
Yeah, they eat, sleep, and breathe this. It's sales is a lot of times an energy equation more than it is like some tactical, like, here's our product, buy this thing. It's transferring energy so somebody actually believes in it, not only trusts you, trusts the product, but trusts themselves to have success in whatever you are selling to them. That'll actually work for them.
You're not going to demonstrate your pick me up at a bar vocal tone again, are you? Like you did last week.
I might have to. The second thing that is a big no if you want to scale is there's not a clear product market fit. Right? I can actually give an example. After we sold our last health coaching company, I'm sure we'll tell the story here at some point, but we launched a community called Daily Health. I love Daily Health. Right, Rob, you're a member of Daily Health. I think we've got a great thing going on, but we don't have a product market fit right now. We've got a group of people that love it, but every time we've gone out in the marketplace has said, this is not something we want right now. And that's fine.
Yeah, or at least they don't understand it.
Exactly. And generally, if I'm under the opinion, if the market doesn't understand it, that's not the market's fault, that's my fault.
They don't want it.
Yeah, and that's okay. So that would be a great example of something that's just clearly not ready to scale up, because I've got the experience as a media buyer where I've spent millions of dollars on just Facebook ads alone. I know how to do that.
Yeah.
Could I go pump $1 million of ads behind that? Yes. Would it work? No, it wouldn't.
Have you seen any entrepreneurs that lack the self-awareness around that and they try to scale before they're ready?
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, I think to be a successful, because there's entrepreneurs and then there's business people. And there is such a massive gap between the two.
Two different skills.
Someone who is entrepreneurial, that's a spirit. You are someone who is a problem solver. You are someone who you just wake up with this energy of like, I just, like, for me, I've got this, it's in my bones. I love not working for somebody else. I would rather be homeless than work for somebody else. And that's not something I say for dramatic effect or clickbait or whatever. I genuinely mean that. And I've put my money where my mouth is multiple times on that front. I'm not going to work for somebody else. And that's not because I think I'm better than anybody else. It's because I'm not happy when I do that. And I'm always going to optimize for happiness before a paycheck. Right? Now, to be fair, stakes are a little bit lower. I don't have kids. And at this point in my life, like, I've got the means where I can not work for a little bit if something happens. So, like, I'm playing a different game now. And I'm not going to force that on somebody that maybe is 50 and has 7 kids and 2 of them are in college, and or maybe they live in Utah and they have 4 wives. Like, man, you got people to support. That's your thing. But yeah, no, to answer your question, I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't recognize, like, it's like when you're an entrepreneur, the street is paved with gold no matter which way you go. That's how you see it. When in reality, it's probably just gold-plated shit.
I think there's entrepreneurship, like, where you're starting an organization, and then there's entrepreneurship where you already exist within an organization, but you own your book of business, and you have control over programmatic growth, programmatic development, future strategy, financial management, and so you've got some clear goals that you're trying to achieve. But it takes an entrepreneurial mindset to wake up every day and say, what am I going to do today to optimize, to scale, to grow, to recruit, to increase referrals? All the things that you mentioned in your entrepreneurial life are things I have to think about every day, just in a different context.
Yeah. I think it's worth taking a couple minutes to try to figure out. I think there's a tangible difference, and I can't quite put my finger on it, because I agree with you. That said, I think it's different in the sense that I think that's the only reason why I work for myself and currently you're inside of an organization. Because I think you are a more talented and have more skill sets as a business operator than I do. You simply have more experience. You've seen more things than I have. You've done more things than I have. But I think there's like this entrepreneurial side of me that's cranked up to 1 million. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it's somewhat like risk factor.
Yes.
is a big difference, right? So I have some guardrails, and I'm existing inside in a pre-existing context that if I have a bad month, I need to figure out why I had a bad month and I need to pivot.
You bowl with the bumpers, don't you?
With the what?
Yeah, when you go to a bowling alley, you use the bumpers, don't you?
I do not use the bumpers, but I do suck at bowling.
Maybe you should use the bumpers then.
I just accept the risk of being terrible at it. But yeah, I mean, it's not going to affect my paycheck at the end of the day if I have one bad month. I'm still going to get paid. I'm still going to have health insurance. I'm still going to have. So there's a little bit like that evening out of risk is there for sure, which allows me sometimes to be gutsier. I also have a lot more pre-existing resources that I can draw upon and support that I can draw upon. So I think that's different.
What does that mean?
Well, like, I mean, I'm not a finance person. I have a finance department that resources me, right? So I know how to read a balance sheet. Obviously, I know how to make decisions based on what my Kaufman Hall reports are telling me. You know, I know how to think about, well, you know, if this upstream volume is changing here, that's going to affect my downstream volume and my downstream revenue here. And what are all the things that I need to do along the way? I know, you know, how to check all that stuff, but I don't have to be the person. I'm not creating Excel spreadsheets and doing calculations. Even when I do an ROI, I just did an ROI for a new program. I wrote the SWOT. I pulled all the expenses together. I pulled, you know, went to our rev cycle folks and figured out what my flow through rate was going to be. And then I fed all that information to my finance support, and they went into the Excel spreadsheet and put the calculations together and, you know, plopped out an answer. Is this a positive or a negative ROI? I don't have to. So I have that kind of support. I have contracting support, legal support, all of that kind of stuff. It's just there. I email them, I call them.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair, like you and I are playing entirely different games in the sense that I've mentioned it before. I'll probably mention it plenty of times. You work for a company that has a multi-billion-dollar market cap, right? It's not like tomorrow your next venture, the company you step into and lead, is going to have even a 7-figure market cap right away.
Right.
It's like entirely different games.
Yeah.
Because the reason I say that is as you're sharing that, I'm thinking, yeah, but I wonder if that's just a security blanket. Like, is this even helpful? Like, won't this just, like, what happens when that's taken away and you're trying to run an organization? When in reality, those aren't even, like, some of those aren't even relevant problems until you're hitting X number of dollars. And, you know, at that point, you're going to have a team under you anyways doing it. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thought experiment, but.
So, okay. So we talked about how do I know when I'm ready to scale up. Now let's say.
Well, I want to make sure because I gave you 2 things that are like definite no's. Just I'll give you the 2 right away that are definite yeses, and then there's one silver bullet that can potentially even overcome these 2 things if you don't have them. The first one is great lead flow. If you've consistently got leads coming in that are warm and want what you have, scale it to the freaking moon. You're likely ready. Even if your product's not great yet, don't wait for a great product. That's going to take. It might not ever come, truthfully. A lot of people underestimate that. But if you have people that are banging down your doors for it, let them have it. Who are you to not give it to them? The second thing is, and this is probably even better, clients that are purchasing, or whether it's a service or a product, if they're raving about it, if they're telling their friends, if they're telling their family, if they're repurchasing, you're ready. You're definitely ready. And I think the silver bullet that can even potentially overcome both of those is if you have a leader of the organization, and even better if it's a founder, if they're mature enough to scale, that's huge. Because if they're not, I'd put that in the signs they're not ready. It doesn't matter if they've got the best product in the world. I've seen so many leaders kill great organizations like that and set great organizations back years, even decades, because they weren't ready for it. Because there are no business problems. There's personal problems that manifest in your business.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think, I mean, on the leadership side, I mean, obviously I've done a ton of leadership coaching, and I think we can talk in a few minutes more about like the life of the leader, the mindset of the leader that needs to scale, because that I have seen an experience. But before we go there, let's talk tactics just a little bit. So I've got the signs are there. I'm ready to scale up. What are the top 3 to 5 things that I've got to be ready to do if I'm gonna scale up? What is it? A skill set? Is it an action that I need to be able to take? What is it?
Yeah. So you're ready to scale, right? Product market fit, lead flow, clients are loving all these signs, check, 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 check. One of the first skills that I would like to see in that point is having hiring skills. And I love recommending this to founders that are in this position for the first time. Outsource it. Outsource it to an agency. But don't just say, hey, here's the keys, go hire me my next 1, 2, 5, 10 employees, whatever it may be. Get into an engagement with an agency where they're working with you to teach you those skills so that you're not dependent on them forever. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. You've got to be able, in order to do that, though, like you're going to outsource your first recruiting, you've got to be able to describe to them really well what you need. What is the job description? What is the skill set that's needed?
Definitely.
Because a recruiter is only going to be able to recruit as well as you can define the need.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point, because I would actually look beyond just a recruiter and maybe look for an agency that specializes in the specific hire you're looking for. Or just to give you an example, I learned this the hard way. So in our first health coaching company, we got this company just over $1 million a year before we closed it, and then just opened a different health coaching company, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But I had been trying to hire a sales team for like 7 months and had made so many bad hires, and I couldn't figure out why. And first it was like, the first couple, as a immature leader, you're thinking, yeah, I just hired the wrong person. Like, that person's an idiot. Well, that's obviously not the case, right? But then it's like, okay, but am I hiring the wrong person, or am I not training them well, or am I not setting them up for success, or wait, maybe my product stinks, and all this doubt starts creeping in. So the first smart thing I did in this situation was I went and found an agency that hired and trained 2 sales reps for you, because we had 1 sales rep that was doing well in addition to me. We bring on 2 more that are really good culture fits. Then from there, I can kind of learn how they did it, and I can add more onto the team, right? And we went out and spent, I think this was a $50,000 engagement. And that wasn't a ton more than we had in the bank at the time, but it was probably one of the best investments we made just from what we learned from it. And the crazy thing was, the 2 people they brought on, they had a backfill that they didn't even honor. And those 2 fizzled out. They didn't honor their backfill. From a human standpoint, we got nothing from it. But I learned so much that then when I went out and hired after that, it was so much easier. And that would have been probably 3 or 4 years of me trying to figure that out before I think I would have landed on that skill set. So it ended up being a great investment.
How did you leverage that? I mean, is it just what you saw them do, or were you asking a lot of questions along the way? How did you do that?
Yeah, it was a program that I'm not going to shout them out, because I don't think they were very ethically run, and no free shout outs here, but but it was a program designed for helping you not only hire 2 sales reps, but build systems around them to support them. So it's a 2-pronged company. They had, on one side, they had the agency side that was helping business owners. On the other side, they had a B2C offer where they were basically plucking people out of jobs and teaching them how to sell. Right. So what they're, and part of that offer is, hey, we also guarantee we'll place you into a job that you make X amount of dollars. Now, where I don't love how they operated was they're taking people off the streets that have never sold anything and expecting them to come in and produce for a company like mine in like 6 weeks. That's not going to happen. It's just not. But regardless, they had great systems around hiring. The best things I learned was being able to see inside their organization how they had gone in 3 years from 0 to about $5 million a year, and being able to see their infrastructure, because they really did lift the veil and say, hey, this is what we're teaching you. We're just going to show you everything we do. That was the value for me.
Okay, fair. So you've got hiring skills as one. What else?
So what's the first thing you do after you hire somebody? Well, you got to support them.
You got to lead them.
Yeah. So people management skills, right? So everybody that is in this position can lead somebody into battle when times are good, right? When money's rolling in, everybody's hitting KPIs, your clients are winning. That's not hard, right? In fact, they could probably do it without you. But what happens when the waters start getting rougher. What happens when there's no more wins in your sales? Well, then what? Can you lead people then? There's a lot of soft skills, and I'll let you speak on those because that's your specialty, not mine. I think I'm at a point now where I probably know them intuitively, but I could never sit down and teach it, and I'm not going to pretend to. But these people management skills are the next skills you need to go out and acquire. And I would highly recommend trying to nail down as many of these skills as you can before hiring, right? But that's that next skill set.
Absolutely. I do think, so there's a concept by John Maxwell. It comes from his book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. Law number one is the law of the lid, which is your leadership ability will be a direct ceiling effect on who's willing to follow you. So if we scale your leadership ability on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a 7, anybody who is a 7, 8, 9, or 10 on that leadership ability is going to be frustrated working for you. So your ability to attract good talent, to retain good talent, is directly dependent on how well you've developed yourself as a leader. The good news of that is that the idea that leaders are born rather than made is a myth. Nobody's born a leader. Yeah. Some people have inherent personality traits that make it easier for them to lead, and maybe they have life experiences like being in team sports as a kid and where they had an ability to kind of pick up that skill set to some degree intuitively. But anyone can sit down and study the discipline of leadership and learn those skills and level themselves up. And so that, I think, when you're talking about recruitment and management, those soft skills are going to be the ceiling of your ability to have that top tier team.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wish I knew. I mean, I have no regrets, but that would have been a very helpful thing to have known sooner, because I went into it thinking that, I played team sports, right? I was a quarterback on a Division I football team, and I led about a bunch of young men, and then immediately went the entrepreneur route, and I had employees within a couple of years of our first business. And my thought was, like, nobody my age has as much experience as I do. There was just a lot. I was very naive and definitely thought I knew more than I did. And it would have been so helpful to have known, because now every spare second I have, that's what I'm studying, is people management, leadership, self-leadership. Because if I can be in control of myself and or manage things that are happening to me, and not necessarily manage these external forces, but just manage how I respond to them, it is infinitely easier to help other people through that. But I didn't know that then. And that would have probably been the most useful thing to have known then.
Well, self-leadership is all about developing a sense of integrity, that you are who you say you are, that you're living according to the values that you've outlined and that you're asking other people to live to. If you can't do that for yourself, if you don't have integrity, you might be able to say the right things and take the right actions in the moment, but people will see through it. It will appear vapid at some point in time, and it will come back to bite you, especially when somebody catches you in the moment when nobody is looking, or you thought nobody was looking, and you're not behaving as you say you should, or as you expect the rest of your team to. So you've got people management, hiring skills, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of other like useful skills. As a founder, right? There's kind of a hierarchy of skills, and if you can be a content expert or have it within your core competency to have all of them, great. If not, focus on the most valuable ones first, because these are going to be the last ones you're going to be able to afford to hire out, right? So even if you just look at a traditional organization, who are the highest paid people? Because in general, these are probably the highest paid skill sets. Whoever owns it is probably making the most money in theory. The next person in line is going to be the CEO, your president, your C-suite, right? They're going to be making that's going to be kind of that next pay tier. Then you're going to have your engineers. Then you're going to have, depending on the organization, probably a mixture of probably sales, and then probably a mixture of like marketing, copywriting. And then you're going to have fulfillment. And it can be at that rung. It can also be considerably lower depending on what they're fulfilling on. Working your way down, you're going to have general customer support, and then you're going to have your VAs. Learn those skills at the top first, because you're going to be holding them the longest, right? There's no way you're hiring a CEO at $500,000 a year. You're not even thinking about it until you're at $2.5–3 million a year. But on top of that, when that time comes, if you have that skill set, how much better can you support that person? Unfortunately, what a lot of people do is they try to replace themselves in some of these like middle tier or even lower tier tasks. Or, I'm sorry, these middle tier or higher tier tasks first, because they're uncomfortable. Like the biggest mistake is everybody right away wants to hire somebody else to do sales because they don't like it. Tough shit. I genuinely do not care if you don't like it. If you're not in a place for it, like if you're hiring a salesperson so that you can go do VA level work or go do fulfillment, that's a bad business decision. Or you just let your emotions let you make a bad business decision. In reality, in that situation, what you should probably be doing is bite the bullet, do sales for 6 months, help the organization grow, and when you can, then scale yourself out of it.
So, okay, that's a good point though, because you just said something about, okay, $500,000 a year. You're not thinking about a CEO. You're not even thinking about a president. You're probably still doing founder level sales. You're keeping yourself in the grind of the day to day, head down, got to grind this out, make it happen. But now I've scaled on that $5 million a year. What else is different besides just some of those, what your leadership activities are as the founder? What else is different about your team, about your organization at those two different sizes?
Yeah, best case scenario, your team doesn't look any different. It's just grown, because there's for $500,000 a year to $5 million a year, there's two very clear paths. There's either more of the same, right? Hey, everything's working, and now we just do more of the same, right? More of the same funnel, pumping more leads in, more of the same sales, just converting more of those leads to sales, more fulfillment, just more people fulfilling on whatever it is, or obviously if it's a product, just selling more of that product. It's just more. And you're not going to need management until 5 million or beyond. So it literally is just more. The other path is you've got a validated offer, you've got really good pieces, but it's something different. And an example of that would be you might need an entirely different funnel, which then means your team looks slightly different. I'll give you an example. When I was doing health coaching, our first $1 million year, there was a funnel we ran that was a Facebook group funnel. And I still see this funnel. It's admittedly, it's not my favorite funnel. Maybe it's just because I didn't like running it. It's very labor intensive on a founder.
Is anybody still on Facebook?
I think everybody's still on Facebook. I think that's that's. And to be honest, I actually think Facebook groups are making a comeback. It's just the funnel looks a little bit different. But regardless, you have a Facebook group where it's free and you're giving away some information, you're nurturing leads. Then from within there, you're generally getting somebody to a sales call or getting them through some very specific funnel. And it's a great funnel. It's probably the easiest funnel to go make your first $10, $20, even $50,000 a month. But that funnel does not scale well beyond maybe $100,000 a month, because it's super labor intensive. It's super follow up intensive. It also attracts, anytime you have a funnel that is heavily free focused in a B2C market, it attracts a lot of non-buyers, and it takes a lot of energy to sift through who's a buyer and who's not. B2B markets, it can probably scale a hair farther, maybe $200,000 a month. But even $200,000 a month is less than $2.5 million a year. That's not going to take you to $5 million a year. So in that scenario, you're going to need a different funnel to get there. And I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but one of the biggest mistakes you could make, which is a mistake I have made, is saying, great, this funnel is not going to get me to $5 million a year. I'm going to shut it down so I can do something else. When what I should have done was let that run, build something else on the side, and allow it to have two. Because I do wholeheartedly believe in the rule of one. I think if my energy isn't going into one thing, I'm not going to be focused. And if I try to do two things, I'm going to fail at both of them. But if you have a working funnel that's bringing in over $100,000 a month, don't turn it off. That's one of the dumbest things. I've probably got a long list of dumbest things I've done, but that certainly deserves its place near the top.
I've got my own list. We could probably do a whole discussion around the dumbest things we've ever done in business or in leadership.
Yeah.
Some of them I don't look pretty good in. We'll bring in the people who experienced it when I did it to them. They can get their retribution by telling the story.
Yeah, for sure. But ultimately, I think the main difference is just going to be, in a perfect world, you are just doing more of what's already working, right? And unless you need an entire funnel change. Another example of a funnel change would be if you've gotten to $500,000 a year from organic. Organic is not something that you can just like crank up to 1 million right away. There's ways to manipulate it for sure. But generally, if you're going to manipulate it and grow it, you're looking at putting paid elements into it. So what do I mean by organic? Rob, you've got what, $500,000, 500,000 followers on Instagram, right? I think somewhere around there.
I think it's closer to 1 million, but we'll go with 500,000.
2 million, yeah, okay. So that's
three.
your
Three.
your organic following. 3, okay, 3.5.
Okay.
So that's your organic following, right? There's not a ton of levers you can pull where in 2 weeks you can go from 3 million followers to 10 million followers. At least not organically. Now, there are paid ways you can do it, and I don't mean going and buying followers. I'm talking about, doing like a shout outs funnel where you go approach much larger accounts and have them promote you as a brand, or just running paid traffic to your organic traffic. It's not gonna scale quite as well as just organically growing though. So that would be the kind of funnel where you might be, if you're like, let's say you have 5,000 followers, you've got a great B2B offer, or you've got a great organic network, and that's what's gotten you to $500,000 a year. Well, that's probably not going to take you to $5 million a year in the next 12 to 18 months. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So at that point, you don't want to stop doing what you're doing, and you've already validated your offer and your lead flow and all that good stuff. But you're going to need a different funnel to 10x. There's nothing you're going to be doing, and I can actually. There's a company that we did a little bit of consulting work for that is exactly like that. So this, without giving up too much information on this company, he has a consulting business, and most of his consulting work comes from his personal network. And he's got it in his mind where he'd like to go from, I think he's probably $600,000, maybe $800,000 a year. In the next 12 to 18 months, he'd like to be doing $3 million a year. He's going to need an entirely different funnel for that, because he can't.
Yeah, he can't rely off of his personal network to go there.
Yeah, he can't 5x his personal network in 12 months. That's not how that works.
Right.
So, because he's tapping into relationships that he's been fostering for 30 years now.
Right. So he doesn't want to turn that funnel off, but he's going to have to go find.
That's the key, right?
A new funnel.
That's the key. And I think so many people, myself included, they make that mistake in search of something that they get in their mind. This isn't going to get me to my goal, so I need to scrap it and do something else. When that should be the fuel that allows you to do something else. Because if you're doing $800,000 a year, you're going to have some free cash flow that then maybe you can dump into an ad spend funnel, or maybe you can dump into something else that's a paid acquisition source. But if you turn that off, you're just unintentionally hamstringing yourself.
That makes sense completely. Yeah, you've got to go find. It's that whole like blue ocean mentality.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've also made that mistake like 3 times. So, because I speaking just from my experience, I think what a lot of founders do is they get to that point and they start getting this grass is greener mentality, and they're just burned out from that specific funnel, and they're burned out from maybe their business in general, that they're like, okay, this is going to be better, and that's what they let themselves turn it off with because of that thought. And there have just been so many moments in my career where, at least before I kind of got that first nut and before I had that first like just big win, it would have been so much more advantageous just bite the bullet and fight through it.
Is there that moment where you're like, with that original funnel, where you're just like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of these people. I'm sick of this funnel or this way of working or whatever it is, and I want to find a new way to do this business?
Yeah, because as a founder doing sales, you are going to be, unless you are somebody that is just so much more emotionally mature than I am, which granted is probably everybody listening to this, but you're going to be so much more attached on those sales than just some run-of-the-mill sales rep, where every no cuts a little bit deeper. And in most offers, especially B2C offers, a 30% close rate is phenomenal. So if 70% of the people you talk to are telling you no, because it's your product, because it's your baby, it's your organization, it's going to sting in a different way. And that sting compounds over time. So eventually you bring yourself to this place mentally where you're like, man, fuck it. I just want to run a funnel where I get an 80% win rate, or I want to just do something different. Or, that guy, he's got a funnel that does this. Like, I could totally do that. I don't know. Maybe you could, but don't turn this off.
Yeah, you come to a place where you resent it, or you feel like,
yes,
these people don't appreciate my product or my service that I'm offering.
Exactly.
Yeah. So last question I have on that is, we've talked a little bit about product versus service kind of businesses. Does any of the tactics that you shared, do they differ at all if you're selling a product versus if you're selling a service?
So independent of whether it's a product or a service, every business is slightly different. The core principles are going to be the same, but how it plays out with different nuances is going to be different regardless. Now, a few just key differences that will make it play out differently. The first big one is price point. Whether it's a product or a service, a lot of times actually isn't super relevant. If it's high ticket or if it's low ticket is more relevant, right? A $2,000 product will actually, funnel-wise, feel very similar to a $2,000 service. Now, of course, the fulfillment looks different, but from a business standpoint, those two will be so much more similar than a $5,000 service is compared to a $100 service. Those will feel entirely different from a business structure point of view, right? Let's say you're having somebody mow your lawn versus somebody's coming in and building a sales team out for you. Infrastructurally, those are like night and day. Another just big differentiator is going to be whether it's B2C or B2B, because those are going to feel different. The sales process will be different. The fulfillment process will be different. And the part that drove me nuts doing B2C for a long time is the expectations will be different. B2C consumers love to think you owe them the world and the moon and the stars because they spent a little bit of money. Business owners own a business. They know the struggle. They have way more realistic expectations. Right? If you help them get to a 10% upside, they're ecstatic. You help someone who's 300 pounds lose 10% of their weight, and they're pissed you didn't help them lose 50% of it.
Right.
The last big differentiator is just going to be whether it's a local business, like take like a brick and mortar, versus a domestic business. You're maybe serving you're just serving the United States, you're serving one country, versus a global business. Infrastructure wise, those three are going to look entirely different, and that's going to set you up on a different track and a different game plan. The main point of it just being different compliance and regulatory and tax dynamics. But again, all of these are going to have the same principles we've talked about. It's just the fact that the implementation is going to look different.
Fair. What do you think if there was one of these things that you would tell a new founder, just go focus on this one thing for now, just to get started? What would you tell them to focus on?
Is this a founder that's at that 500K a year?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. The mindset piece of it, right? Because you can go find the tactics. You can find great agencies or consultants that can help you with that side of it, which I would almost always recommend, because it's just going to shorten that learning curve immensely. But the mindset side of it, and maybe it's a season of my life I'm in, but I just don't feel like I can get enough of that, because I feel like that is constantly the best investment I'm making, is investing into the mindset piece of this. There are times where I was literally sitting on gold mines of businesses in my early 20s. I did not have the mindset to cash in on that or to make it work.